All right, so for part 2, we're going to be setting up Dreamscape. So that means we're going to be adding a sun to our scene. We are going to be activating the Dreamscape plugin. We are going to be setting a few basic parameters and doing a test render to take a look at what our scene looks like. So let's get to it. So we are going to hop over to the lighting tab, and we are going to click in our list. And for some reason, it's because I have multiple monitors. The window shows up all the way over here. It won't show up over here for you. You will be selecting Dreamscape, and you will be clicking on Sun. All right, so once again, I like to create things in the top viewport. That's just a preference for me. So just like the target camera, you're going to be creating the sun, and then there's going to be a target for the direction that the sunlight is going to be in. So if we click kind of off to the back and we drag toward our teapot, there is the sun, and the light will be coming towards us, toward our camera. I'm going to use the move tool, and I'm going to hop into the side view, and I'm going to elevate the sun so it's kind of above the teapot in the scene. And I'm going to use the top viewport again to just kind of move our sun off to the side so that it's visible in our camera's perspective, and we are good to go with that for the time being. Now, if we hit render right now, it's going to make an error message because we need to tell 3D Studio Max that we want to utilize Dreamscape to generate our sky and light and shadows for our scene. So we do that by going up to rendering, environment, and you're going to get what's called the environment and effects panel. You're going to click add, and you're going to click Dreamscape, and you're going to hit OK. And that's all for now. I'm going to put the rendering and environment window away, and I am going to bring up our rendering tab, and you will see that nothing that exciting happened because we are still in the top viewport. So keep in mind that when you want to render the camera view, you want to either have right clicked in that viewport to activate it, or we can be fancy and we can switch it to camera and we can render it again. And now we have something. Cool. So my settings, my sky might not look totally like yours. It actually probably will not. I'm going to actually reset my Dreamscape to factory default settings because I was playing around here. And if I render it again, no, it's just because of the elevation of my sun. So here's the thing that's cool about Dreamscape. It does a lot of different calculations. It calculates based on the elevation of the sun that you place in your scene relative to your camera and such and other things. So, yeah, so that's what we have so far. I'm going to close my render window, and I'm going to move my thingy off to the right here. And I am going to zoom out a tiny bit, move my camera out a tiny bit. There we go. All right, so let's take a look at what we can do with our Dreamscape settings. So before I bring that parameters control thingy back up, I'm going to click on the sun, and I'm going to go to what we call the Modify tab. Some of you may have investigated the Modify tab earlier when you went to the to do the parameters activity in our geometry lab, and you'll see there's a bunch of stuff here relating to our sun. And I'm going to actually move our sun up and elevate it more in the scene. I'm also going to bring it closer in the scene. So you can see that there's a balance between distance and height that will keep our sun still visible to our camera. We want our sun to be on. We want it to be lighting up our scene. And you can tweak these parameters and achieve some pretty wacky effects. I encourage you to do that later on, but for now we're going to leave these as is, and we are going to turn on shadows, geometry to geometry, and we'll say shadow density is 0.8, because when it's 1, it doesn't look all that realistic. So let's see what that did for us. I've got my render window off to the side, but for you guys, hit render, and there we have it. So it kind of looks like a basic sunny day there. I'm going to just leave this over here, and I'm going to bring, let's see, I am going to activate transparent shadows too. I'm going to move this off the screen, and I'm going to move this onto the screen. I'm also going to rotate my teapot a tiny bit because I don't really like that view of it. I'd like the spout to be a little more prominent. So I can click render again. There we go. And now the teapot's kind of facing that way. All right, so we can make some basic settings to the sun like we just did, but if we bring up the environment and effects control, which again, if you closed it, is found under rendering environment, and we have Dreamscape added, we can scroll down, and here are some settings that I would like for you to adjust. We're gonna set ground level to -999. We're gonna hit enter, and we'll show you what that does. That kind of gives us that sort of ethereal feel, like we're up in the atmosphere chilling. Gets that going. We're also going to click render daylight. And what that actually does, you'll notice the effect it has on the shadow in the scene and the teapot itself. It takes into account the atmosphere. And so what it does is it scatters the light around the scene. And so there's some actual natural reflection from the light being generated by the sun and the other things in the scene, such as the atmosphere and the surfaces in the scene. So you can see already the appearance of our shadows is improved by rendering the daylight. If we scroll down, I'm going to leave this as is for the time being, but you can really achieve some crazy results by tweaking these things, which we can do later. We're going to continue to scroll. Atmospheric parameters. So back in the day when I used to create animations of other planets, I used to play with these settings a lot to simulate what would happen on a planet like Venus, for example, when you have a really thick atmosphere with lots of clouds. Light from the sun would behave in a different way than it would on a planet like Earth. So you can achieve pretty cool results with that, but it's also easy to get really out of control really fast with that. So we're not going to touch these for today. Maybe we'll get to those a little later on. We're going to scroll down to our cloud parameters, and we are going to take a look at working with clouds. So I'm going to change the cloud type to cirrus, and I'm going to render again. And you'll see that we get probably some thin, wispy clouds in the background. We get a little bit, it's kind of hard to see. So when you get this situation, if you want to use cirrus clouds and you see nothing, what we're going to do is we're going to scroll all the way back to the top, and we're going to grab this little, I can never remember which one it is. It's this one. It's the preview. Brings us this little guy. And this thing's cool because this is our camera view, this little V. So if we drag our cloud map, so see there's a cloud here. Now you can see it's going to generate some clouds in our scene. Just a little bit though. Cirrus clouds are very thin, wispy clouds, very subtle, just a little bit going on here. And I'm actually I like to move my maps around a lot because it kind of generates a random cloud pattern and you can just sort of play around with the effect that you like. So I encourage you to do that. Move your cirrus clouds around until you get a look that you like. And I think I like this. Some nice little cirrus clouds just sort of chilling off in the distance there. So something else we can do is add another cloud layer. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to leave those as stratus clouds, which is the default. And you can see that the stratus clouds are kind of thicker clouds that I'm going to, as you can see, as I pull them away from the camera, they sort of appear like they're off in the distance. And I'm going to see what that gives me. Yeah, kind of a basic cloudy sky there. Nice. So some other parameters that you can work with is you can turn density up or down. By turning the density down, obviously the clouds are less prominent. If you turn them up, you're going to get more grays, kind of more of a thundercloud type of appearance. All right. And also, as you up the detail on the clouds, you'll see that your renders take longer and longer. So you'll start to see what I mean when I say things are, quote, expensive to render. You can also adjust the altitude of your cloud map, which means the clouds are technically higher in the sky. So I've just done that. So you can see that by doing that, the clouds sort of shift upward, so our cloud map changes a little bit as a result of that. So I encourage you to play around with some of these parameters, play around with the altitude settings, play around with the density settings, add a couple different layers, mix and match, and work with the cloud maps, move them around to achieve an interesting result that, something that, you like in your scene. So we're going to get that kind of squared away first. And then in part 3, we're going to put some finishing touches on using our sun and actually getting that sunset effect to look the way we want it. So I'm going to stop this video for now, and we will pick up again in part 3.